And good afternoon, producer Susan. How's life treating you these days?
I'm doing well, Jersey Joe. How are you?
I'm just enjoying the summer. We had the humidity broke and we had a
Yeah.
little tornado here. How about you? I saw you had a tornado warning the other day.
Yeah, yesterday afternoon.
So, but no tornado. Your house is still standing.
Yep.
All right. Well, good.
Lost a few tree branches, but that's the extent.
Oh, good. All right. Glad to hear it. All right. And is your weather getting any more tolerable?
It's quite lovely today. There's a wonderful breeze and low humidity.
Well, good. Enjoy. You've only got about 3 weeks of summer left, so enjoy it. Can you imagine? End of summer's only 3 weeks away.
Yeah, hard to believe. Although that is not the official end of summer, as we
That's
know.
true. That's true. All right. All right. You want to hear what we're going to try to talk about today?
What's on the agenda for this afternoon?
Well, this afternoon today, by the way, we're recording this on August 8th. Our quote of the week is from Winston Churchill and on the differing problems presented by capitalism and socialism. In our stupidest thing that I've heard all week, we have two contenders. This is going to be another listener choice. One is an article by people are claiming that Ohio legislators are they're saying that Ohio legislators are trying to suppress voting by college students by requiring them to show proof of residency when registering to vote in that state. How dare they demand proof of residency in order to register to vote? How outrageous is that? The second is a publication claiming that conservatives were afraid that men would start eating more vegetables. You're going to have to decide which one of those is more outrageous. You know any conservatives who eat vegetables?
Everybody should be eating vegetables.
That's right, and most do that I know. All right. We're going to tell you how much money Ford is predicting they will lose on their production of electric vehicles this year, and how you personally will be helping to pay for some of those electric vehicles, even if you don't own or buy one. Did you know that you're going to be paying for electric vehicles?
I'm sure the government's at play here.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. Um, if you need to buy a new gas stove in the coming years, by the way, because the government has already decided that your current gas stoves on the market today, now they're no good anymore. You need to get a more high efficiency stove that's going to cost several $100s more than your existing gas stove, because the new ones aren't good anymore. But they're telling you, but because they're high efficiency, they're going to use less gas and save you money. So that'll make up the difference. We'll tell you how much they're going to save you. In the past, we've talked over several different podcasts about how the city of San Francisco is in the final stages of a death rattle, with stores closing, people, hotel developers just walking away from the hotels, just say to the bank, keep the hotels, we can't make the payments, shopping centers closing down, Nordstrom's pulling out, Whole Foods pulling out. We've talked about all that stuff, right?
Yep.
Well, Portland, Oregon has said to San Francisco, ha, you think you're good? Hold my beer. Watch this. We're going to tell you about how Portland is trying to take the title of the fastest declining city away from San Francisco. You know who Bill Maher is?
Yes, I do.
Uh,
Talk show host.
yeah, comedian. He's a comedian who became a kind of a liberal talk show host, and now he's a political commentator. And he's really started even though he's a really radical liberal, he's really come out and said some things that really pissed off a bunch of liberals. And he's a really quick clip about him pointing out how many Democrats are hypocrites when it comes to, he actually uses the word full of shit when it comes to dealing with housing and caring for millions of immigrants flowing into this country. And our taxpayer relief shot is from Raleigh, North Carolina, where a man who was experiencing road rage followed a woman into a shopping center parking lot where she went to try to get away from and tries to open her car door. It doesn't end well for the guy. By the way, I actually had another one where a guy breaks into the apartment of his ex-girlfriend where she was staying with her new boyfriend and started to literally beat her up in front of the new boyfriend. And that didn't end well for him either. It was almost a toss-up. Maybe we'll do that one next week. But all right, so we ought to be able to fit that in. Not too much on the table today, right? You think we'll fit that in?
Yes, my dog's telling me they're stranger danger outside.
Okay, yeah, I thought I heard a strange comment there for a while. All right, so here's the quote of the week from the former Prime Minister of Great Britain, Winston Churchill, the late Winston Churchill. And he says, the inherent vice of capitalism is the unequal sharing of blessings. We hear about this all the time. We have billionaires, we have homeless people. It's the unequal sharing of blessing. But then he contrasts that with socialism, which he says is the inherent virtue of socialism is the equal sharing of misery. And think about that. Under socialism, everybody's equal, equally miserable. And I've told this story before. I think I have. When I used to travel in Moscow back under when it was part of when Russia was part of the Soviet Union, it was the fairest place on earth. Everybody had to wait in line for 4 hours for a loaf of bread, and all the stores would close at 2 o'clock in the afternoon because at 2 o'clock in the afternoon they had all run out of bread. But it was fair. I mean, it was absolutely fair. Didn't matter how much money you made, you had to stand in line for your bread. Now, jump forward 30 years, Soviet Union is gone. Russia is now an independent country, and capitalism is thriving. You have oligarchs, you have free enterprise, you got people opening shops, they're keeping the money they make. So it's no longer fair because you don't have rich people and poor people. But you can walk into any store in Moscow at 10 o'clock at night and walk out 5 minutes later with a loaf of bread under your arm. So you ask anybody who lives in Moscow, would you like to go back to the good old days when it was fair? And they will tell you in Russian, hell no. So, many people equate fairness with goodness, and they think, well, if it isn't fair, it can't be good. No, fair and good are not synonymous. And again, when things were fair in Russia, things were awful. Things are no longer fair in Russia, but they're so much better than they were when they were fair. So Winston Churchill said that back in the 40s. He was 50 years ahead of his time. All right, you ready for the two contenders to decide which of these is the stupidest thing all week?
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. Well, in Ohio, with a lot of colleges in Ohio, legislators have finally said, we just realized we've been letting students, out-of-state students, register to vote just by showing their college ID. No driver's license, no proof of residency. Just, I want to register to vote, which means that students who actually lived in another state, had driver's license from another state, were registered to vote in another state, could technically be voting in two states. So they said, this is dumb. We are facilitating and enabling potential voter fraud. So if you want to vote in Ohio, you have to show that this is your declared residence. And to do that, you need to show us something like a driver's license. So if you lived in Michigan and you're going to school in Ohio and you want to vote in Ohio, you need to show proof of that change of residency by showing us that you've changed your residency and that you now carry an Ohio driver's license instead of a Michigan driver's license. Of course, liberals say, no, you're trying to suppress the youth vote. So on a scale of stupid, with 10 being incredibly stupid and 1 being not at all stupid, where would you rank that on the scale?
So I think we've mentioned before that I work for an institution of higher education, and there is a big push for the students that go to school here to register here locally, because this is where they're living for 4 years, and this is where local government will impact them for the next 4 years. But let's be real, they're not changing their driver's license, so I don't know what is required of them to register to vote. But there is a huge push for them to register to vote.
No, and I understand that, and I'm fine with that. If they want to declare themselves to be a Pennsylvania resident, I'm absolutely fine with that. But if you're already registered to vote in like a lot of states, like New
I think
Jersey,
if you do register, there needs to be some sort of way that if you choose to register here for the next 4 years, and you're probably not changing your driver's license, that it somehow voids your other prior registration.
Yeah, because when I moved to New Jersey, well, first of all, in Colorado, everybody there, would get would register to vote. And here in New Jersey, when you get a driver's license, which I just did 2.5 years ago, when you get your driver's license, they said, would you like to register to vote by mail? I said, sure. And I get a ballot, just shows up in my mailbox once a year or every 2 years. So if I am a student with a New Jersey driver's license, if I choose to register to vote in another state, I'm still going to get a mail-in ballot from the state of New Jersey.
See, that's where there's this loophole that wherever you decide that you're going to go to school for the next 4 years, that needs to void out New Jersey.
Right. So all the Ohio legislators are trying to do is say, hey, we don't want to enable people to enable them to illegally vote in 2 states.
Yeah.
I don't think that's
There's a loophole because you should be able, if you're living somewhere for 4 years, you should be able to vote there because that's where law is going to affect you.
I couldn't agree more. In fact, if those kids are really smart, they would change their state of residency to where they're going to school, and then they will qualify for in-state tuition instead of out-of-state tuition. So anyway, that's one. All right. But anyway, people liberals are referring to that as a voter suppression effort. That's
I can tell you there's a huge push during election in October.
Right.
They do massive pushes here to get kids to register locally here.
Right. And again, and when the Ohio State legislature says, hey, that's fine, but then you need to show that you're truly a resident of the state by showing us a driver's license. All right. Anyway, the second is a publication, and here's the headline. This is a headline, quote, why right-wingers are so afraid of men eating vegetables.
I don't understand that. Explain that everybody needs to eat their vegetables.
But not only they need to, but they're saying that right-wingers, i.e. conservative, are so afraid of men eating vegetable. And then in the article, they go on to say, meat holds a special place in our national mythology, conjuring the frontier, the cowboy, and the ranch. Real Americans eat red meat, and real Americans men grill it. Red meat is so central to this mythos, this imagined mythos, that threats to it are sometimes construed as totalitarian threats to fundamental liberty. So they're saying that when you promote eating vegetables, it makes right-wing men paranoid. So if you had to pick which one of those two,
I think I gotta go with that one. I mean, just before we started recording this show tonight, we were just talking about cooking racks of ribs over the weekend and what we were serving with that, vegetables, of course, to balance out your meat diet.
Right.
And I think that's got to be the winner, because going back to the voting one, I mean, that's just a loophole in the system that needs to be fixed.
Right. So you don't think that right-wing men are afraid of that men eating vegetables will make them less manly? Okay. All right. Let's talk about electric vehicles. I don't know if you've heard, but this has been in the past couple of weeks. I've seen several stories where electric vehicles are piling up on dealer lots. Have you heard or seen anything about that?
No, I haven't.
Yeah, it is. I've seen several stories that sales are slumping. It's been on the TV. I've heard radio stories about it, like Bloomberg. And then this announcement by Ford, and here's kind of what's stunning. Ford has just announced that they believe they will lose. You ready for this number? And this is just their electric vehicle division, not the whole company, just their electrical vehicle division. They are predicting they're going to lose $4.5 billion on the sale of their electric vehicles this year. And here's one of the stunning things about that announcement that just came out that week. That number is 50% larger than the loss they were predicting just 4 months ago in March, when they were predicting a $3 billion loss. So can you imagine in March, you're Ford, you're saying, yeah, things that they aren't moving as fast as we wanted them to, and we think we're going to lose about $3 billion. 120 days later, they said, that $3 billion loss we told you about, it looks like it's going to be more like $4.5 billion.
And what do they attribute the loss to?
People just apparently, despite the incentives, people are less than enthused about electric vehicles. And part of that, you've heard about the Ford Lightning, the big pickup truck, and we talked about this thing. It can power, you can plug it in and power your house when the power goes out, and blah blah. But we're talking a $100,000 pickup truck that has limited range, and if you're towing a trailer, it can get you from here to the local Walmart.
I think that's the thing. The electric vehicles are very expensive, and they're not practical in all applications. I think probably the best application is for that long distance commuter to get back and forth to work. And that's about it. Cause like you said, you can't use it to haul things or go significant distances without having to stop and plan and charge up at a charging station.
Right. And don't get me wrong, I am not anti-EV. I think for a 2-car family, the second car, you'd be crazy not to have an EV as the second car,
Yeah,
because
I
if
mean
you,
they definitely have a place application again for that commuter, but
yeah,
I but they're expensive.
my wife, I don't think in the past 10 years has driven more than 40 miles in a single day. I don't
I
think
believe it.
she'll go a week. She won't drive 200 miles in a week. For her to have an electric vehicle, it's a perfect car for her. And as long as we have a internal combustion engine
Yeah.
car that I can go cross country, drive from here to Colorado if I wanted to, only stopping, for gas and a bathroom break 15 minutes at a time. I think that's the perfect marriage. But let me tell you about how you're
But
helping.
let me ask you a question
But
though. If you were to take her car shopping and you had two similar cars and one was EV and one was gasoline, which one would you end up buying?
it would depend which one's going to cost me more out of pocket, which is my next topic.
Yeah, so the EV is going to cost you probably more than that gasoline engine.
Well, not so. Here's the other thing I was going to talk about. I saw this other day. I was stunned. In some state, of course, there's always been the federal and under the inflation reduction or the infrastructure bill that got passed last fall by Biden,
Mhm.
they put some additional incentives. And then on top of that, states are adding their own incentives. In states like California and Colorado, for depending on your income level, because some of these rebates are staggered based on your household income, and others are staggered based on the cost of the car. In Colorado, as an example, do you know what the sum of the rebates are if you wanted to buy an EV? What the sum of those rebates come to? You want
For
to
an
guess?
individual or for the state?
No, for an individual.
Oh, well, a couple $1,000s.
How about $26,500?
Yikes. That's about half the price of a
26.
car.
It's more. So let's say you're going to buy an EV like a Chevy Volt or Bolt or whatever for 40 grand, and you made less than 80,000, and your household income was less than 80. I'm sorry, and your household income was less than $120,000. You could buy that $40,000 car for a net out-of-pocket cost of 13,500.
Wow. Now that is a good deal.
So when you ask me that question, if I'm looking at two cars and one's going to cost me 40,000 and the other is going to cost me net 13,500, I'm
Mhm.
buying the one for
Yeah,
13,500.
definitely.
No, but of course, where's this money coming from? You're helping to pay for it. That 26,005 is coming from federal tax dollars and state tax dollars. So even though you don't own an EV, even though you're not thinking of buying one, but you're helping to pay for people buying EVs. By the way,
The tax dollars that work.
I have a business partner who's on his third Tesla. Each one of those Teslas is an $80,000 car, and he's gotten federal and state tax rebates for each and every one of them. So that's why I said you're helping to pay for an electric vehicle. So trust me, one of these days, if you could get 26,500, I don't know what Pennsylvania rebates are, but in Colorado and California, they're around $26,000, depending on your household income and the cost of the car. On
Yeah,
some of
I
these,
have no idea on EVs what the rebate is.
yeah, on the federal, there's kind of an upper limit. There's not a limit, but there's a break point below 40,000, below $80,000 value of the car, you get the maximum. And if you go over 80,000, they start to cut back on the amount of the discounts. But still, if you want to buy a $70,000 EV, well, let's put it this way: you buy a $60,000 EV, you get tax breaks that could pay for almost half of it. That's kind of a tough deal to pay to
Yeah,
back up.
so Pennsylvania looks like it's just a tax credit of and this is not a manufacturer rebate. This is just a tax rebate of $2,000.
How much?
2,000.
Yeah, that's not much. In Colorado, it's like $13,000. So,
Yeah.
okay. All right. So you want to move on to gas stoves?
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, so just last week we talked about how the Consumer Product Safety Commission said, all these gas generators you can buy in Home Depot, they're not, they emit too much carbon monoxide. You can't sell those after February next year. So you have to get a new generation of portable generators, which are going to be much more expensive because they're going to have to have the equivalent of an emission control system, something like a catalytic converter on them. So the gas generator you could have bought this year for $500, if and when they ever get to the market, that same gas generator probably cost you $800. Now, same thing with gas stoves. They said, the current gas stoves are too inefficient. They emit too many whatever gases, so we're going to mandate that manufacturers stop producing and selling the existing gas stoves and come out higher efficiency stoves that emit less fumes or whatever, NOx or whatever, and distribute the heat and heat more evenly. But by the way, they'll have you won't be able to have these really high burners. Some of these, like you want to heat a pot of corn or something, you won't have that big massive burner, so you'll be less featured. Anyway, they initially came out and said it would save the average consumer, almost $90 a year in savings, which would offset the higher cost. Department of Energy came out and said, you remember, and by the way, this is very low key. It was almost missed because they came out like on a Friday with wasn't even a press release. It was just an interagency, like a bulletin. They revised that operating cost savings. So instead of $90 a year, you know how much they're now saying after further study, those new high efficiency stoves are going to save the consumers?
How much?
How about 9 cents a month?
That's not worth it.
9 cents a month, if you're not good at math, 9 cents times 12 months is $1.08 a year. So if the new stove cost you $200, oh, and by the way, and these new stoves, because they record, cannot be installed by the homeowner. I've changed out stoves. It's real simple. Pull away from the wall, shut off the gas. There's a big nut. You take a big wrench, undo the nut, push the new one in, boom. The new stoves have to be professionally installed. So in addition to the stove costing $200 more, you have to have a licensed plumber come in and install and adjust the high efficiency stove. So figure between the cost of the stove and the cost of the professional installation, you're probably talking $400. So at $1.08 per year, how many years are you going to have to operate the stove?
You'll probably would have sold your house and bought a new one.
Well, think about it. $400 at $1.08 per year is like 396 years.
Yeah.
So you'll recover that. And by the way, and that's not counting the interest. That's not counting the cost of money. If you look at the interest that you would have earned on that $400, you'll never make it back. Mm-hmm. Because even at 4% interest on $400, that's $16 a year. The interest alone, you'll never make that. You'll never make that money back at 9 cents per month or $1.08 per year. All right, you want to move on to Portland versus San Francisco?
Yeah.
All right. So again, we've talked about the decline of San Francisco, and I used to love going there. I don't ever want to go back.
Used to be a great city.
Used to be a great city, but not to be outdone by the rapid decline of the city of San Francisco. And by the way, not only have businesses been shutting down in San Francisco, that loss of business and people moving out has also resulted in a huge loss of tax revenues to the city of San Francisco. Well, the city of Portland, Oregon has taken up the challenge, and in a true hold my beer and watch this attitude. Here's a quote from the story that I'm reading from. Multnomah County, which is where Portland, Oregon is located, reportedly lost more than $1 billion in income between 2000 and 2020 because of residents fleeing the state amid surging crime, homelessness, and safety concerns. Data analysis conducted by Oregon Live showed that, here's a number for you, how many tax filers you think have left the state in the last year? Taxpayers.
Oh, thousands.
14,257 tax filers. And when I say filers, that's income tax return. So if it's a couple with 2 kids, that 14,257 tax filers could be 4 people. So I think on average, you would at least double that number for people filing jointly, even with no kids. And their dependents, so showed that 14,257 tax filers and their dependents left Multnomah County during the first year of the pandemic in 2020 and took a record $1 billion of tax income with them. The data also showed that higher earners were more likely to leave since their jobs could be done remotely during shutdowns, and they were more able to relocate and get jobs in different states. If you're in the lower end of the income spectrum, it's really tough for you to move out of state.
It is.
First of all, where are you going to get the money to rent a moving truck or get a moving company? And if you're going to get another job if you move out of state? The
And
average income,
that's one county too.
just one county. So, and that's Portland, Oregon. So, unfortunately, I think, again, I think we've talked about San Francisco in 3 or 4 different podcasts. I'm afraid that we're going to see more and more Portland coming up.
Yeah.
And it's just sad that with these blue cities are committing economic suicide. And I think we talk about Baltimore a couple of months ago.
Yeah, I was just in Baltimore 2 weeks ago, and it's, that's another city that's losing people left and right, and crime is up and business is down, revenue is down.
Yeah, and I think I'm doing this from memory, but Baltimore used to have a population, I'm going back into the 70s, of over 900,000. And while the rest of the United States, I'm doing this all from memory, while the rest of the country population has grown by about 28% over whatever time frame that was that I'm calling this from, Baltimore, instead of growing by 28%, shrank by 33%. They went from 900,000 down to 600,000. And all of the jobs and tax and the people and the businesses left. And when the businesses left, the jobs left. And when the jobs left, those were the taxpayers. So Baltimore is literally a contracting city with very few jobs. And only the people left are the people who couldn't afford to move. It's just really sad.
Yeah.
Baltimore has committed economics. And by the way, Baltimore makes it into the top 5 of the deadliest cities in the United States.
Yeah.
It's just, crime is rampant, no business, no jobs. And by the way, their school graduation rates are like 50% high school graduation rates. You would have to be absolutely insane to even think about opening a business in Baltimore. I don't know. As beautiful a city as it is, I can't imagine why you would even think about opening a business in Baltimore.
So I was just looking at the stats here back in the 70s. And I remember going to Baltimore when I was a kid, and, the Inner Harbor and the aquarium, it was, the place it was a big tourist destination. The population of the city was 1 million. And now the population is, and this is last year's estimate, this is 500,000.
500,000. So it's down by half.
Yeah.
Half.
And I don't know what 2023 is looking like, but
right. And that city's got everything going here. Temperate climate, harbor town.
Yeah.
And yet they've lost half their population. All right. You gonna move on to Bill Maher?
Yeah.
You know who Sharon Osbourne is, right?
Yes, I do. Ozzy's wife.
Ozzy's wife. So he's having a conversation, and he's got a drink in his hand. This is very low key. And he's talking to Sharon Osbourne about what hypocrites Democrats are. And this is really, really quick. And he does use the S word, but it's bleeped out. So here we go with Bill Maher talking about Democrats and what hypocrites they are. Here we go.
And of course, they didn't like it. And it's just a good example of, could everybody just stop the posturing? Don't pretend that you love migrants so much, and then when we send them to you, you don't like them. You're full of shit, and we can see that. Yeah, you liked them when it wasn't your problem because you're not a border state. And then when they show up in Chicago and New York, you're like, what are we going to do with these people?
Had you heard that before?
I did not hear that. No.
You want to hear it again? It's so quick. We're going to play it again. Here we go.
And of course, they didn't like it. And it's just a good example of, could everybody just stop the posturing? Don't pretend that you love migrants so much, and then when we send them to you, you don't like them. You're full of shit, and we can see that. Yeah, you liked them when it wasn't your problem because you're not a border state. And then when they show up in Chicago and New York, you're like, what are we going to do with these people?
And by the way, the latest, and talk about what has New Yorkers upset. I don't know if you saw this, but do you know where Randall's Island is in New York City?
Yeah, it's in the East River, isn't it?
East River, right? Yeah, and it's really big. It's where they have a huge sports complex there with a lot of soccer fields. I think they've got 4 soccer. And again, there's not a lot of places to play soccer in Manhattan. There's no public soccer fields in Central Park. So Randall's Island has become they've got baseball fields, and they've got 4 massive soccer fields, and all of the high schools, not all the high schools, but a lot of the soccer clubs they all on the weekend, those things are booked. You have to sign up, they're booked months in advance, and they're in use from 6 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. Well, the
Yeah.
city of New York has decided to convert those all of the soccer fields, which is 4 of them, into a tent city for homeless migrant men. And the residents are just completely, they're spitting mad. And I would be too, if your kids played soccer and the mayor just said, your kids can't play soccer for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
Because we've just converted all the soccer fields to a homeless encampment, not to a migrant encampment. Wouldn't you be upset?
Yeah, especially, they talk about, some of the city kids needing these outlets to keep them out of trouble.
Yep. And now they've just said no more soccer for you. Sorry, guys. All right. All right. You ready to move on to a taxpayer relief shot?
Yeah, because we have less than 10 minutes left.
All right, I'll make this quick. We call them taxpayer relief shots because when a good guy or a good woman with a gun shoots and kills a thug, it saves the taxpayers the cost of a trial and putting the guy in jail, which is $75,000 to $80,000 a year. And here's how the sheriff of Santa Rosa County, Florida, describes it. If I can find him here.
Somebody's breaking in your house, you're more than welcome to shoot them in Santa Rosa County. We prefer that you do, actually. Hopefully, you'll save the taxpayers money.
Do we got time for Sheriff Grady Judd?
Oh, sure.
All right.
One of them.
One of them. Here we go. Grady Judd. You want Swiss cheese or you want to blow him back out of the house?
Blow him back out of the house.
All right. Here we go. Polk County.
But we have received information in social media that some of the criminals were going to take their criminal conduct into the neighborhoods. I would tell them, if you value your life, you probably shouldn't do that in Polk County, because the people of Polk County like guns. They have guns. I encourage them to own guns, and they're going to be in their homes tonight with their guns loaded. And if you try to break into their homes to steal, to set fires, I'm highly recommending they blow you back out of the house with their guns.
All right. Do you think that you could find a sheriff in Pennsylvania to say something like that?
In some of our rural communities, probably, yes.
All right. So let's go to Raleigh, North Carolina, where there's a road rage. And I know this guy got upset with this one. He was tailgating her, blowing, flashing his lights, honking his horn. And so she pulled off the highway and pulled into a supermarket parking lot. And here's what happens next.
I'm Gerald Owens. New tonight, Wake County District Attorney tells us the use of force by a driver against 49-year-old Stephen McLam was self-defense. Aaron Thomas is live in North Raleigh where this happened. Aaron?
Yeah, Gerald, I spoke over the phone with Wake County District Attorney Lauren Freeman. She tells me this is a case in which a woman felt like her life was in danger here at that Food Line parking lot, which in that road rage event. So why were there no charges filed? Or according to two legal experts, they say this is likely a case in which the state's castle doctrine took effect. Just days after a shooting investigation outside this Food Lion on Lead Mine Road in Raleigh, a major with the police department shared a breaking update this evening.
It was determined that no charges would be filed unless new evidence becomes available.
Wake County District Attorney Lauren Freeman confirmed this narrative involving a road rage event turned deadly. 49-year-old Stephen McLam is accused of tugging on a woman's car door handle after following her to this store. The other driver shot McLam. He later died at the hospital.
It's obvious that this individual contributed to what occurred to him that day by his own actions.
Defense attorney Lee Turner mentioned statute 14-51.2, commonly referred to as the Castle Doctrine.
Basically saying that your home, your automobile, your workplace are all considered to be an individual's castle, and you have a right to defend yourself inside of those locations.
To be clear, the person defending themselves has to feel there is an imminent threat of serious bodily injury to themselves. Defense attorney Daniel Meyer says in this case,
The law presumes she was afraid for her life because this person was trying to unlawfully enter her castle, her car.
and tonight we also searched the court records behind Stephen McLam and his criminal history. We saw one charge that listed assault by strangulation that he was charged with just last year.
Oh, really neat guy. Prior charge for assault by strangulation. Really sweetheart, huh?
Yeah. Makes you wonder, though, why is he back out on the street?
Why is he back out in the street? And by the way, the fact that he didn't get the door open, it would have taken a second for him to smash the window and grab her by the throat. So
Yeah.
clearly you've got a violent felon And well, I think to me that's a great taxpayer leave shot. What do you think?
Yeah, interesting comment. The I think it was the police officer made in there, because I know the Castle Doctrine varies from state to state, but in Pennsylvania, it's your house and your car.
Right.
He made a comment about also applying to your place of work.
Yeah. Yeah. If somebody tries to.
I don't know that. I don't know what the law is in Pennsylvania with respect to place of work.
Well, that was North Carolina. So anyway, and maybe next week we'll do the guy who breaks into to this other apartment and starts to strangle his girlfriend in front of her new boyfriend. Anyway, anything else you want to add before we wrap up?
But we do these. You do one taxpayer relief shot week, and I know that each week you probably have close to a dozen to choose from.
Easy. So yeah, so good guys with gun are people on the left will tell you that's a myth. It never happens. It happens literally every day of the week. And by the way, not all are fatal, and we'll go into statistics, but not all are fatal, but people with guns are defending themselves literally every single day of the week.
Yeah.
Not everyone is fatal, but we're only doing the fatal ones here. Anyway, before we run out of time, I want to thank everybody who listened to this podcast for giving up 30 minutes out of your day to listen to me ramble on about the things that I find of interest and important. If you want to see some materials or story links you heard me talk about today, you can find them at on the Jerzee Joe website at jerziejoe.com. And I say this every week. It's Jerzee spelled J-E-R as in Robert, Z as in zebra, E-E, jerzeejoe.com. If you want to send me an email, just send it to Joe at jerziejoe.com. Producer Susan will post, I'll send out the audio only tomorrow. And producer Susan will put some of the story links we talked about up on the website as well. And with that, unless producer Susan has something else to add, we'll wrap it up for today. Anything else?
Enjoy this great weather.
All right. Talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.